we're preparing to have the most awesome last week of summer.
And here's our 5 reasons why we think it's rad. Welcome to BoxedMeeples. I'm Libby, this is Julian, and today we are talking to you about Last Week of Summer, an 80s vibe game by Sean Holt of Allies or Enemies.
Now picture the scene, it's 1986 and you and your friends are enjoying the last week of summer before you have to venture out into the real world. Now this game is all about hand management, worker placement, push-your-luck thrills, all wrapped up in a totally tubular theme inspired by 80s movies, TV and music. You'll be collecting cassettes because every fantastic memory from the 1980s is tied to a fantastic song. And with a playtime of 60 minutes, you'll be able to table this in your last week of summer.
So let's dust off our neon shades and make this last summer of freedom legendary. We're going to talk to you about our 5 reasons why we think this game might be for you.
From just looking at the box art, you can tell this game is steeped in 80s nostalgia. Everything about it harks back to that decade. It almost feels like a love letter to the 1980s. The art throughout this game is all about in neon. It's got these electric blues, it's got these vibrant pinks. It almost looks like the front cover of a VHS movie. You'll be visiting classic 80s hangouts like arcades and video stores and skate parks, paying with things from your Velcro neon coloured wallet. And you'll be collecting cassette tapes, grabbing snacks, visiting the diner, and pulling off tricks on your awesome skateboard. Everything in this game feels like it's been taken from one of those teenage flicks you saw in the 80s. You know, those 16 Candles, the Breakfast Club style things. If you've seen any of those movies, you know the places you're going to be going in this game.
Yeah, and it's really lovely that you have those tokens and things like the cassettes that are, placing down, which are eventually going to be points. But it feels nostalgic having that as a token to sort of identify with when you've reached a goal of some sort in the game. That's really great. And those Velcro wallets.
They look great, don't they? And
I definitely had one of those.
Yeah, and it's throughout the whole game. So even the little locations you visit have their own name that says where you're going. And each of those look like it could have been something you went to in the 80s. It's such this kind of attention to the theme that makes it really exciting and nostalgic to play if you grew up in the era.
Last Week of Summer is like a mixtape in itself in the way that it plays. It's a compilation of all the best bits of board gaming, each area that you go to having a slightly different mini game within it that you need to achieve. And the sort of the base mechanic that overarches all of that is this hand management where you're deciding where you're going to visit in the morning, at noon, and in the evening, and whether you're going to just visit the location or whether you're going to work at the location. You have those cards that you have to use and decide where you're going to be. So say you're visiting Burger Rocket, for example. If you go there, of course, you're looking for delicious food. You can have fries, milkshakes, burgers, tacos, all sorts of things. And as you visit there, you've got tracks on each of those different types of foods that you're hoping to get to the top of. In order to do that, you're pulling from cards, and you can see on the back of the card what type of food that might be. But you don't know whether it's going to say yuck or yum on the other side. If it says yuck, of course, your turn is over. But if it says yum, you might choose to carry on pulling different cards and try and get yourself up on various tracks. Try and get to the top of maybe 1 or 2 of them if you are lucky enough.
Next up, you might visit Top Records. Music was a big thing in the 80s and vinyl collecting made you king. Now here you are buying 2 records, and the more you buy, the more you can place on your player mat. But as you buy them, their popularity increases. If they become too cool, suddenly they are uncool because too many people like them.
You can visit Prime Video, which is a bit like Blockbusters. And you go in there and you rent some movies. You're trying to look at how many movies you can rent from all the different genres, the horror, the action, the comedy. And in order to do that, you're using a bit of a Mancala effect where you can pick up piles from one space, move those across, and then take everything from that last section. And they'll be in different colours. So obviously you'll move up the tracks accordingly to get those different ones. Once you get to the top of the track, of course, you get to put down your cassette. for having achieved it.
Yeah, I really like skateboarding, might surprise you. So I like doing my skateboarding tricks when I'm playing this game. Here you are drawing tokens to place them down on your player mat, hoping to get a collection of 3 and perform that awesome trick, because as soon as you do, it impresses all your mates and you get a little point for it.
You can, of course, go to the arcade and you can pump your money into those machines. You roll the dice and see what numbers you're getting. You're hoping to get rows of 3. The more money you pump in, the more re-rolls you can have. So it really does help you to have had your little stockpile of money, if you can get it, before you go to the arcades. But if not, you're just hoping for the best.
Now, what if you're a bit of a bad boy in the 80s? You might be sticking your tag all over the back of the cue mart. And in this mini game, you're placing down tokens on a grid to try to occupy the spaces that you've got to meet for your own personal objective. Now, once you've done that, you can start sticking out massive tags and really say you were there.
So this is an eclectic mega mix of games with numerous strategies and experiences at each of these locations.
And what I really like about this system is each of the areas you can go to is packaged in a very similar kind of Shackleton base. You can pick your favourites and make sure they are in play, and you've got all the instructions and all the components and the board ready to go for a really quick setup. So yeah, you can focus on the ones that suit your play style more when you're playing the game. And you know, if you don't like kind of push your luck mechanisms, avoid those kind of areas. With 6 different mini games to choose from, even in a 4-player game, you're not going to have them all out on the table. You're going to have at most 5 of those, and you're going to have less in smaller player counts. So every game is going to feel slightly different because there's going to be different areas you go to, and even the positions they appear around this kind of town is going to vary from game to game.
So to do all these fun things at all these locations, you're in the majority of times going to need some cash. In that hand of cards, you have one of every location in play, and then you also have a working card to match each of those locations, plus one additional working card for an anywhere location. And this is where you're going to get that income from.
And you need to make sure you actually do some work in this game, because much like McFly, it is bad to be a slacker, because at the end of the game, if you've got any work cards left in your hand, you will be docked valuable victory cassette points at the end of the game.
What adds even more to the variety in this game are those cool kids. There was always cool kids in the 80s.
Oh, I was the cool kid in the 80s.
Sure you were. Each round, the cool kids will be visiting the locations at different points in the day, or maybe they won't be there at all. And it really keeps you on your toes about where you want to be when. Because if you're hanging out with those cool kids, you could potentially be running up the friendship track. They might give you some different bonuses that might help you out with those different locations. And those bonuses are tailored to the different locations as well. So for example, at the arcade, you might get a cheat code, which lets you adapt your dice roll plus or minus 1, which is super helpful to be able to filling in those rows. However, if you go to a location when the cool kids aren't there, you probably get a slightly better immediate bonus from that. You might get one more actual thing. So you might get to place an extra tag down at Q-Mart, for example. So balancing out that kind of long-term reward versus instant gratification really dictates where you're going when, and makes the game change things up. Of course, at the end of the game, if you're at the top of those friendship tracks, you're going to get to put more cassettes down. So in terms of bonus points, the cool kids is where it's at.
Of course, any last week of summer is full of parties. You're going to be partying every single night. The location of each party differs, which adds another layer in this thought process, because the rewards, if a party is taking place, means an extra cassette, and they're attributed to different players depending on how much time they've spent at that location, which means you've got to then work out where are the parties being held, because a party is only going to be held at each location only the once. So if you know there's going to be a party there in the evening on a turn, do you make sure you're there to maximise your score on there, making sure that you become the party king? Alternatively, maybe you just don't want to focus on one location, you want to focus at many to make sure that you stand a chance of getting a higher score when a party takes place there.
So that's our 5 reasons why we've really enjoyed playing Last Week of Summer by Sean Holt at Allies or Enemies. This is a crowdfunding game, so do check below for the links to the campaign and also the links to Allies or Enemies, their YouTube channel, where you can keep an eye on the progress of the game. This is a prototype, so all of the pieces in there are, of course, subject to change.
Now, if you're enjoying what Libby and I are doing, if you think cowabunga, that is awesome, do make sure you follow us on all sorts of social media, but subscribe to our YouTube account and join in the discussion on there. What are your memories of the 80s, and has this tweaked any nostalgia in you? What are your moments you really enjoyed in the 80s, and what do you think of this game?
Yeah, we would love to hear from you.
But as always, thanks so much for watching.
See you next time. Bye.